Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and this video we're breaking down 2011's The Thing. Now, I always found it kind of funny, right, that we had a movie that was about an alien that perfectly mimicked its victims, and then we got a movie that mimicked that beat for beat, even down to having the exact same title. Saying this though, I think this is a pretty fun prequel that ends in a way that makes you instantly want to put John Carpenters on. Throughout this video, we're going to be breaking it down scene by scene and talking about all the hidden details and things that you might have missed in it. There's actually a lot to uncover and deeper layers to it, and hopefully watching this video will help you enjoy the movie more. Now, there were several things sequels and remakes almost put into production over the years, but they all failed to make it past the screenwriting phase. We even almost got a sci-fi series called Return of the Thing that would take place in a small American town after the events of the movie. We of course had the game, which acted as a sequel, and several Dark Horse comics that continued the tale. John Carpenter, he actually pitched his own sequel, with him setting it after the events of that first film. Both Childs and McCready looking older would be explained with frostbite, and we'd continue and see how the Thing tried to get to civilization. Now, John Carpenter, Kurt Russell and Keith David were all back on board. However, making a sequel was more difficult than making it out of Outpost 31 alive. Things changed though with the success of the Dawn of the Dead remake, with Mark Abram and Eric Newman being given unrestricted access to Universal's library of IPs. Stumbling across The Thing, they convinced the studio to make a prequel instead of a sequel or going in the remake direction, stating that they wanted to tell the story of the guys who were just ghosts in the Carpenter classic. They thought it would flesh out the horror of what happened before it all went down at the US camp. We also got several carryovers from the quote-unquote Dead series, with Mathis Van Heinigen Jr. being involved in the making of it. Definitely pronounced that wrong, but his sequel to the Dawn of the Dead, titled Army of the Dead, that was cancelled 3 months before filming, and thus he quickly looked around for other projects. As we know, Army of the Dead, it would continue in another form over at Netflix, with Snyder continuing to direct the project himself. Mathis though, he was desperate to continue working, and thus he kept going back to Universal to try and get a project. Realizing a Thing prequel was in development, he leapt at the chance to direct it, due to the original being his favourite film alongside Alien. Obsessing over the details, he learned everything about the Norwegian camp, and also made sure he developed new ideas that we hadn't heard or seen before. Apparently the director carried a laptop with him at all times that had thousands of screen captures from the first film. He used this as a reference point when working with the set designers, and I have to admit, you can see the love for the original just in every moment of this film. I will also be calling it the original. I know The Thing is a remake of The Thing from Another World, but when I say the original, I just mean that. Apologies. Now, the director cited his prequel as a companion piece to the first film, and he felt blessed to expand upon something he fell in love with as a teen without really detracting from it. Wanting it to be more than a horror, there would be a heavy focus on the human drama, with it missing out on some romantic and sexual relationships. They also looked at the source material Who Goes There, which focused more on scientists rather than the blue-collar workers that the original cast were seen as. I really don't envy the task that they had ahead of them, as The Thing's got such a big following at this point. It was always going to be difficult to top how good that original was. The Thing, of course, famously also bombed, so there was the risk for the creative team that this wouldn't do well either. Because of that, I feel like a lot of the risks they were going to take eventually got stamped out by the studio, which we will talk more about later on in the video. There's a crazy big Reddit post from someone who worked on the film that I'll talk about later on, but there were major arguments over the special effects in the film that caused a lot of issues in the edit. Either way, it kind of feels like a cover band playing the greatest hits of their favourite singers, and knowing Carpenter could have been involved in an actual sequel, it does feel kind of disappointing. Carpenter of course crafted the first film, so he gained a ton of knowledge about what went down here, and I think having him on board the franchise again would have made a massive difference. Rather than going with him though, the studio went for this, but I actually do think it has some great aspects in it. Now that's a making of, and for the next part of the video, let's actually break down the film and talk about what went into it.
You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home.
Now, the movie opens with the classic 80s Universal logo to take us back to the decade. This of course was used to open the thing up, and we also start with an establishing shot of snow with the same black font being used. The creative team were actually almost forced into filming the movie digitally, but instead they decided to shoot on film to make it more akin to the original. This gives it a slightly grainy effect and keeps the movie's look in line with the original tonally. The same score is used as well, with us getting shots from a helicopter just like the original. Now the film was actually going to open up in a completely different way, with us getting a prologue showing the ship's pilot purposely crash landing on Earth. If you read the expanded lore, then you might have read some instances where the thing was actually a prisoner in the cargo hold that was picked up on a biological expedition mapping out the universe. However, the creature managed to get out, and after the thing assimilated the pilot, it crawled into the snow before succumbing to the cold. Now the ending originally had the pilot in it too, with Kate coming across it when she entered the ship. A model of this was made, stuff was shot, and it was placed into the film, but test audiences didn't understand what this actually was. Thus they ended up covering it with that weird Tetris CGI, which sorry mate, doesn't look that good.
He's made you look a right knob.
Now, I don't know why they did that, because I doubt anyone was confused over the engineer and alien, and I think it would have added more to the mystery of what went down on the ship.
My God, what the hell happened here?
The most appealing thing about the Norwegian camp was wondering what happened, and I think our imaginations could have run wild with what went down on the ship. The ship itself could have been a prequel to the prequel, with that being this film's version of the Norwegian camp. Now the snowcat here starts to pick up a strange SOS beacon, and this was also used as a sound effect in Sunshine. The sound actually mimics real frequencies heard from space, but no one's quite sure exactly what they mean. Some have deemed them to say hit the like button, but the snowcat cracks through the ice, and at this point they discover the ship. Now, unfortunately, they don't recreate the shot of the Norwegians standing in the snow, which was picked up from the footage found at the base. Kinda sucks because it's such a famous shot, and this itself also came from the thing from another world. At this point, we get a recreation of the title sequence, with the original being created through burning a plastic bag that would then reveal the letters. Recreated in CGI, this kinda sums up the movie, but we do get some practical carryovers in the next scene. Opening on a computer screen, we then cut to a dog-like creature, which was actually a prop from the kennel scene in the first film. Here, we also catch Kate listening to this. Now this is actually the song Who Can It Be Now by Men at Work, and this song's probably as close as we're gonna get to the title Who Goes There. However, it's about paranoia and someone wondering who's out there, which of course plays into the film's themes. Kate was actually meant to have common character traits with Ellen Ripley from Alien, and interestingly, Mary Elizabeth Winstead's been fan cast as her daughter several times before. Now there was the worry that putting a male in the lead would have people making comparisons to Kurt Russell, and with the first film being nothing but men, they thought that a woman would help dissuade from that happening. Now she's not the only one who's meant to act as a tribute to what's come before, and at this point we then meet Sanders. Sanders is supposed to be based on Arthur Harrington from The Thing from Another World, with them even rocking similar hats later on in the film. He was constantly talking about signs and how that would save them, and as far as attitudes go, he acts extremely similar. Now, Sanders was originally played by Dennis Storhoy, and they shot a week's worth of film with the actor in the role. However, he was apparently fired due to his alcoholism, though it has to be said he staunchly denied this was the case. Several of the scenes shot with him though, such as the arrival at Thule, actually have moments with him in it, but they digitally replaced his face. Now Kate's seen as the perfect paleontologist, and I like the shorthand here of having her studying a frozen creature, which does explain why they picked her for the dig. She's of course American as well, and universal, yeah, they weren't exactly going to put out a film with nothing but Norwegian speakers in it. We actually get several other Americans in a Brit as well, and she's joined by the likes of Adam and Joel Edgerton's Carter. He says that he can't get hold of a newspaper that isn't 3 weeks old, and he wants to know how his team, the Cavaliers, are doing. Originally, this line was going to have a bit about him being unable to reach the American camp on the radio, which would of course hint to McCready and his group. There's also a deleted scene where they contact Outpost 31, but as I'm sure you can guess, they are unable to reach them.
Calling Outpost 31. Urgent, come in, over.
Try another frequency.
I can't reach the next room on this bloody thing.
You reach anybody yet?
Reach anybody? We're 1,000 miles from nowhere, man, and it's gonna get a hell of a lot worse before it gets any better.
Well, stick to it, Window. Stick to it.
Flying out of the camp, we see a perfect recreation of the Norwegian one, a hut like McCready's, and the yellow snow truck that appeared in the original. We can also catch a sign which says Thule Station, though I have been told it's pronounced Tool, which itself has its own meaning. Tool is said to be the most northern region of the world, and in ancient Greece a myth centered around an explorer traveling to it. Said to be the farthest of all lands, it existed where the nights were only 3 hours long, and the summers lasted an age. That's like the opposite of this location, and instead the remoteness leaves them in isolation. Now they're taken to the crash site, and as they enter, we see a strangely shaped ice formation sitting to the left. This was meant to be a nod to the Xenomorph, with the same effects team here working on Alien 3 and Alien vs Predator. We meet the rest of the team, who then unveil the ship, looking identical to how it did originally. They discuss the signal, which I think was more likely a warning, rather than the SOS that they think it is. Going outside, we see the ice containing the Thing, which is later brought out like a block identical to the original. I always felt like this was meant to echo a coffin, and back at the base we meet, wait, is that my man from Game of Thrones? It's him, it's bloody him!
I want to make babies with her.
At this point, Sander says,
Make sure that everyone stays off the radio.
Which again was supposed to cement why Windows hadn't spoken to them.
What about him? Is he completely disinterested? Or...
Oh, that's Lars. He doesn't understand English.
Now, Lars, out of all these people, he's the only person who makes it to that first film, but as we know, he's killed during the opening. He of course couldn't speak English, explaining why he just didn't do that like the rest of the guys are doing. He's with his dog too, and as they ride the block in, we can see that he's by his side. Kinda sucks knowing what happens, and retroactively it makes that opening scene even more personal. Drilling into the ice to get a tissue sample, they accidentally push too far, and this digs into the creature, which ends up waking it up. Now, not to be like, leave the thing alone, the poor little thing, but I think that had they not done this, the entire expedition, it would have been absolutely fine. For this video, I actually tried to sympathise with the Thing and think about how it operates, and to me it's a creature that rarely goes on the attack. I think it normally acts in self-defense, and it's mostly upon being harmed that it decides to counter. During the original, it was happy just hiding out, lying low, until things like the blood test caused it to reveal itself. That hot needle was what set things off, and it was only then that it actually came forth. Now there's also the moment with Norris, and many have theorised that using the paddles is what sets the Thing off, as it sees it as an attack due to them creating an electric shock. Now I know that it of course goes out hunting for creatures to assimilate, but I think that in this drill acts like an attack on it, and that's what sets it off. Now when building these sets, they also didn't know how tall to make everything, so what they did is they actually used Kurt Russell's height and how tall he looked in the scenes to create all the measurements. Throughout these scenes, we also see the dog trying to escape the kennel, echoing the moment from that first film. Now after Derek watches it, wait, is that Mr. Echo? Bloody, it's Mr. Echo!
Yes.
Now after Derek watches it escape, he runs to warn everyone and catches them in the middle of a song. Not going to try to pronounce the name, but it's about a kid walking in the woods and coming across a cuckoo. Now cuckoos are actually known as brood parasites because they lay their eggs in the nests of other birds. These birds then raise the chicks thinking they're their own, which may riff upon how the Thing integrates into other groups. Either way, that night it ends up bursting through the ice, and they do a great bit of attention to detail which carries over from the Thing. Like the Thing, the 82 version. Technically it's not a carryover, it's happening setting it up. Now, in that scene, just before Doc enters the room, we can see above MacReady that the roof's been destroyed. This is why there's icicles coming down from it, snow littering the ground, and the roof being destroyed like this explains why the room's the way it is. They then go searching for it, and the current form of the Thing aggressively attacks the workers it comes across and completely tears them apart. When discussing the film, the creative team said this was intentional, and it was upon assimilating a human that it started to think and act like us. Rather than being like a wild beast from this point, it's far more calculated and strategic, sowing paranoia because it knows that's our weaknesses. It's an idea I really like, and though I might have crapped on the movie at the start, I do think it has these really nice touches that do show they cared about it. This is also the only point in which Griggs could get taken, as just before it breaks free, we see him going outside of the helicopter. When they venture out, Sam even asks him about the chopper, and he says,
Griggs, leave that open. I don't remember.
Now this is kind of a clue, as if he was a human, he would have likely closed the door naturally as a force of habit. Keeping things closed is what these characters would be used to doing, so him not doing it shows that something was amiss. Elsewhere, another team comes across blood at the kennel, explaining how Lars's dog would come to be infected. Now the two unlucky red shirts see the creature underneath the hut, and it's only upon burning it that it completely wipes it out. bullets fail to work because each cell acts individually, and thus it has to be incinerated at a molecular level. With the body on the table, they start to examine it, and this echoes the scene from that first film. Discovering Henrik was being mimicked, Juliet runs out the room, and it's at this point that she's comforted by Griggs. Later on, Kate discovers blood in the shower, and I think this belongs to her, and it's when he attacked. As we see, Juliet runs down the hall, and then Griggs stares at her, likely planning his next move. Now, it's his blood and discovering the fillings that makes Kate realise someone's been taken over, and she rushes outside to try and get the helicopter to land. It's at this point that Griggs makes his move, but personally, I always thought this was a bit stupid. The thing to me, it only reveals itself when it has to, and it'll even attack other things to keep its cover up. This just seems like a dumb move because it could have just landed, and this crash kills it when its MO is to survive. Kate then goes forth to talk about the blood in the shower, and we see as the group they start to get a little bit paranoid. Now it's both Juliet and Edvard who suggest they should leave and look for the others, and as we learn, both of these are the thing. In the case of Edvard though, we can't deduce when this happened, as there's not really a scene like there was with Griggs and Juliet. However, I think due to them both trying to separate the group that it happened before this scene, and they both played the team and made them split up. Upon Kate presenting the fillings, he also shuts down the conversation because he knows this is a way to determine who is who.
What are those?
I think they're fillings from someone's...
We wasted too much time already. Lars!
Listen!
Now from this point, most of the people leave the room, and Juliet throws suspicions on Colin to try and goad Kate into following her. She's just like, come with me, we need to talk about this in secret over in this private room that no one else is in. Yeah, don't go there, love, you're an idiot. But yeah, at this point she of course goes to make her move, and the creature comes forth and then starts to attack her. Now a debate that's constantly had in the Thing community is whether those infected actually know they are. Palmer highlighting Norris's heads made many suspect that they don't, and it's possible that this scene also backs it up. Now when they open the door to see her assimilating Carl, Juliet's looking at them almost like she can't control what's happening. It's only when Kate says burn it that the Thing side of the body notices them, even though Juliet's been looking at them the whole time. Therefore, it could indicate that Juliet's a separate entity, and the reason she doesn't react is because she's still in there somewhere. Huge shoutouts to Outpost 31 on Reddit for pointing that out, and I actually think that it makes a lot of sense. Now outside we get a scene that riffs on the burning one from the first film, in which they stand about as the fire of the Thing's corpse provides the light in the night. This is where MacReady discussed how easily it can hide, and we even get some lines that play off that movie.
Could be any of us.
This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable out in the open.
Be alone. Vulnerable. That's exactly what it wants.
Lars ends up showing Kate a box of grenades, which we know he'd later use when trying to hunt the dog. At this point, they're interrupted by Edvard, who possibly wanted to make a move thinking he may be alone. Now Sam and Derek then stumble in, having made it out of the crash and then across the wilderness. Everyone's suspicious, but there's actually some kind of tribalism here, as Kate doesn't want them dead due to the pair being American. We see this later on with the Norwegians also sticking together, and Sanders trying to play up the distrust with the Americans. I think, honestly, you probably would trust people from where you're from more, and it touches upon the sides and biases we have, which is a really clever thing to talk about. Them coming in from the snow, of course, is like when MacReady returned from the hut, and Sam also says some lines that are similar to Doc's.
You need our help.
Start working on a new tech.
I need Doc's help.
Yeah, you don't want to drug me. Mac, I'm not a prisoner!
Preparing a blood test, I thought we were going to get a remake of that scene, but the Thing burns it up and we watch the lab set on fire. Edvard's the only one who is the Thing at this point, and you can kind of see him strategically watching the others start to suspect the rest. He actually breaks up the fight between Colin and Adam, which would win him some points as being a more level-headed group member. Now from here we cut to the filling scene with Kate examining the teeth of every single person. Soon as the British guy was like, I've got no fillings. I was like, he's the fucking Thing. He has to be the Thing. There's no way a British guy doesn't have any fillings. Now, I don't actually have any fillings, but let's be honest, British dentistry in the 80s wasn't the best. Interestingly, Colin's the only person from the no-filling gang who doesn't become a Thing, and he's the one that Juliet threw suspicion on before. Now, another clue that Edvard's actually the creature is that he's the only group member who doesn't open his mouth. He just completely skips through the test because I think he's trying to show he's willingly going along with things. I think my big problem with the scene is that you think it's going to go somewhere, but ultimately it doesn't, and we're just left with a dull feeling. It's a complete opposite to the original, which had that tension building up, and then you hit a point where you thought nothing was going to happen. Then bang! Palm is revealed as the thing, catching you completely off guard after this extremely intense moment. The channel Horror Culture went into the issue with this and also played this interesting clip directly from the commentary.
As a fan, you think, okay, it's the blood test scene and somebody will pop open. But actually we don't, which is actually better.
Now I disagree with this, and I think it's better to actually have the tension capitalize on that, but let me know below exactly what you think. Outside, Lars and co go out looking at a hut which resembles the scene in which MacReady and the gang go out to Blair's. Now back inside, tension starts to mount with Sanders pointing out the American thing and Edvard backing him up.
Faren er ikke herinde. Det er en dævl. Amerikanerne er den virkelige fjende.
Han har rätt.
Again, it's a masterful play to sow distrust, and when Sam and Derek break in, a la MacReady, Edvard's the one who eggs Peter on to not trust them and to burn them. Just like Clark and the Thing, Peter is shot and killed, and the reveal in both is that the character was actually human. Edvard is wounded during the explosion of his flamethrower, which is akin to Norris getting hurt when MacReady breaks back into the base. In the case of that, Norris feigned a heart issue, whereas Edvard here, he just acts unconscious. He launches his arms as he's carried in, and we see as his body starts to morph while Carter tries to burn him. This kind of builds off the back of MacReady being unable to ignite the flamethrower during the blood test, and it allows Edvard to make contact with Adam. Now this is one of those moments that always comes up first when I think about this film. My kids, right, sometimes, might sound a bit weird, but they'll crawl on me, yeah? They're 18 months old, but they'll crawl on me, like headbutt me, and just push their faces into mine, right? And I always think about this whenever that happens. Just, they're trying to absorb me, the kids are trying to kill me. They're the Thing! Get them, they're the Thing! I think this shows just how quick it can contaminate, and it's the one time we see how assimilation actually works. Just connecting to Adam's skin allows it to start to absorb him, and making contact with his saliva is how it starts to spread. Now the 82 version's been seen as a metaphor for HIV, which itself is spread through bodily fluids. Maybe it was building off that, and later on Kate says she's going to try and reach the Russian camp. This might be a comment on the Red Scare, and that was a theme that popped up in The Thing from Another World. Now all this stuff leans heavily into the CGI side of stuff, but as we talked about, there was a lot of back and forth with the VFX. The effects team did a lot of the work practically, with them building animatronic creatures and puppets for The Thing. Now according to Reddit user Mice and Dram, they had access to the film and know what went on. They wrote a big post detailing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff and what in the end the studio ended up changing. They said that the people making the movie weren't doing it for a paycheck, and they had a ton of awesome things that never made it to the film. They created all these scenes using practical puppets that would then be enhanced slightly by CGI elements. However, the studio said it looked too 80s and ordered everything to be replaced completely with CGI. I think it's a shame, as the 82 film's of course known for its effect, and the work Rob Bottin did is legendary. Inside, we can also catch Jonas up against the wall, which reminded me a bit of Windows after Palmer bit him. Kate burns him and his legs go back and forth, just like Windows did when MacReady pulled the trigger. Now Sam gets an axe and they walk through the corridors, looking for the other arm that escaped out of Edvard. Planting it in the wall, you can catch this axe in the original and see it embedded there as the group start to walk about the base.
Don't touch it.
Yeah, leave it, mate. Just leave it there. There's no need to take a weapon with you. And it needs to be there when MacReady shows up, so just leave it. Now, Sanders is grabbed, and we also have Colin, who becomes the guy in the chair that took his own life. There was actually a deleted scene that showed him locking himself in a room, and then he discovered the Thing was in there with him. With nowhere to go, he then grabs the razor and slumps down in the chair that he's later found in. Now, this was removed for pacing issues, but I kinda like how it plays out and ties into the original. Either way, we still see his fate at the end, and at least we kept the focus on the Edvard Adam thing. Burned and running outside, this obviously becomes the two-headed one that MacReady and co bring back from the camp. Realizing that Sanders is heading to the ship, they then decide to mount up to stop it taking off. Now during this, we of course have Carter working with Kate and them taking the grenades that Lars showed them earlier. In the snowcat, we get a quick shot where we focus on his earring, which is important to bear in mind for the final few moments. As they run along the ship, we see the blue light powering it up, and this is similar to the strips that we could catch at the beginning of the original. Caught inside the ship, Kate has to take the creature on, which she kills with an explosive like how the Blair thing was taken out. I think the need to put Sanders' face on the creature really ruins the effect here, and from what I can gather, this wasn't always going to be the case. Originally, it was actually just going to change into the pilot, and then Carter would arrive and help take it down. This would be a way that it could buy Kate's trust and make her think that he was one of the good guys. Now, I know Sanders' face eventually turns more like what we'd expect, but yeah, I just think it kind of Scorpion Kings this a bit when it really didn't need to. Also, the thing puts tentacles around a gap to try and grab her, but it could just, like, I don't know, detach and send other things her way, but it doesn't. Just weird for a shapeshifter to get stuck on something, but allows her to grab the grenade and finally take it out. It's the old explosive in the mouth trick, which Mary Elizabeth would also do in 10 Cloverfield Lane. Powering down the ship, both she and Sam make it out, but there's just one thing going on that might cause an issue. The pair were separated, and therefore Kate doesn't know if he can be trusted, and we did get a shot when he heard something down the corridor when he was on the ship. Now when they're in the snow, his earring is missing, and she burns him because when questioned, he reaches for the wrong ear. Because of this, it makes Kate think that he's the thing, and she refuses to take the chance that he might be the creature. Now during the burning scene, they play the thing screams over the top, but many have felt this doesn't necessarily confirm he's the alien. There's also the argument that the thing takes someone's memories, and this is how it's able to copy languages and so on. Instead of doing blood tests, you could just be like, who did you say your favourite breakdowner was again? And as soon as they say Ryan Area, you know they're a liar and a piece of shit and a shit judge character. So Sam not doing the earring thing, it doesn't necessarily confirm it, so instead we should look at the script to see what the real intention was. Sorry Ryan if you're watching this, I don't mean it, love you. The script has Sam's face beginning to elongate immediately just after she blasts it, showcasing that a transformation's underway. So that confirms the intention was to do that, but they left the scream in instead of doing the effect. Now I kinda wish they just left it ambiguous, because I think the first film's ending maintained interest because it doesn't give us the answers. We as the audience are supposed to be as paranoid as the characters are, second guessing who's the thing, which that ending does perfectly. Also, the reason that MacReady and co don't see these snowcats is because we can see they enter from the other side of the ship. When they go towards the hatch, we can see it's on the other side to how MacReady saw it, and therefore the helicopter that MacReady and co landed in wouldn't have seen their snowcats. This is why this stuff didn't get picked up when the Americans were at the ship, and yet it's just a nice little bit that doesn't break the continuity. Either way, we cut back to the camp and see the Norwegian helicopter that starts off the first film. Lars shoots through a window and almost hits his buddy in the leg, which echoes what happens to Bennings when he arrives at the camp. Now the dog escapes and Lars demands they take to the sky, which segues perfectly into what comes next. We end with footage from the '82 movie with a creature running in the snow before we cut to black. Brilliant way to close it out, and I still get goosebumps as we end the film. Now unfortunately it's unlikely that Kate survived, as it was Carter that knew the way to the Soviet base. Additionally, the screenwriter said to Bloody Disgusting that in his script, Kate didn't survive. Kinda wish, right, and sequel ideas here, but we could have a film at the Soviet base where we can catch Kate coming in and it then kicks off. The Russians could then go to the US camp and find Childs and MacReady, and boom, we've got a sequel that pulls them all together. Unfortunately though, I doubt it's going to happen, as this movie also flopped and tanked all their plans. Earning just $31 million off a $38 million budget, at least it copied its predecessor and also doing badly too. Unfortunately, whereas that gained a cult following, this doesn't really seem like it has, and yeah, I still think there are good bits in it, so mega fans, you should check this out if you haven't. But if you're a mega fan, yeah, you've seen it already. The director had such a bad experience that he quit Hollywood, and he's gone on to work solely on Norwegian films. He said the constant studio interference made it so he'll never work with an American studio again, and it does kind of suck because this was the guy's favourite film. It just seemed like a dream project. I think there is a lot to like here, but unfortunately, it just had that impossible task of living up to what came before. They had the chance to do something that explored the thing more, but instead they stuck to the same beats and didn't really go anywhere. Dogged by the CGI and practical debate, it seems like no matter who watches this film, that's always the main conversation topic that comes up immediately. However, I think the flaws also lie in the way the thing acts, and throughout the movie how it's been presented. A lot of the time it just attacks for the sake of attacking, whereas in the '82 version it was far more strategic. We also had elements like the Norris hair, the dogs, and several versions that really pushed the creatives to the limits when coming up with ideas. Here it tends to just be a spiky creature with tentacles attacking people, and there's not the variety that made the first movie so memorable. I think if you're looking for something to watch, then maybe check it out, but I can't imagine why you'd ever put this on when the original's there too. The Now Playing podcast actually described it perfectly, and they said it's like warmed up leftovers of a meal from the night before. Sure, you enjoyed it, that there's still good things there, but it just doesn't fully recapture what went down originally. Still though, I hope you've enjoyed the breakdown, and if you did, then please hit the thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe for videos like this every week, and if you want to get access to these videos early, then please click the join button. For just 99 cents a month, 99 pence, cheaper than a pound mix-up, I think, you can get access to the channel, all these videos early, and yeah, it massively helps us out. Next time we're doing The Truman Show, I've got a little thing video in between, and then we're also jumping over to a film I think you guys are going to love. Now if you missed our first thing breakdown, that's on screen right now, and definitely head over there right after this. Out of the way, thank you for clicking the video. I've been Paul, you've been the thing I love, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.